Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below, your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today, we are discussing one of the earliest references in the succession of Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual calendars. This is the reference 25654BA in yellow gold, and it's part of a series of watches made from approximately 1982 to 1993, co-equally with the 25554 and the 5554. This was one of the original Royal Oak Perpetual calendars, and you could see that this example was made prior to 1993 because right about 1992-1993 was when those watches started to get new reference numbers and leap year indications. This has the earlier dial built on top of caliber 2120/2800, so it looks like that original 1982 watch. Now, taking a quick look at the case, you could see that there are a couple of features that mark this watch as a product of a period, but we'll start with the basic dimensions. 39 millimeters in diameter, 8.8 millimeters thick. It is 48.9 millimeters from case flank to case flank. If we include these little intermediate links, then the total distance across the wrist is a beefier 52.2 millimeters. The watch is in very good shape. Now, I mentioned there are some signs of the times. Examples of these watches exist from the very early 80s and the early 90s. You could see with this single fold AP style logo clasp and then a trigger release. This is one of the later clasps and bracelets. Rolling it onto the wrist, you can see that the watch wears thin, even though this model was a little bit thicker than the 25554. This is a timepiece that is still only 8.8 millimeters thick. And you can see that it's broad across the wrist and it's larger than its rated size of 39 millimeters. But here's the thing, it's still not big. I would say it wears like a 41 millimeter round watch. So keep your wrist size in mind. If you can wear a 41 millimeter round cased watch, you can wear this watch. It easily slides underneath the cuff. You'll have no issue right there. The timepiece does feel very solid. It features a monoblock case. As you can see, this is something that has since fallen by the wayside on Royal Oaks. The case back and the mid case are all one piece, so these bolts don't actually hold them together. You can remove those bolts and the case back and the case will stay together. There is no seam between them, and this is part of the original Royal Oak design dating back to 1972. Initially, they were all monoblock cases. So, rolling around, you can see the bracelet is beautifully finished and has wonderful structural integrity. This one's in outstanding condition. You can see satination vertical on the side, satination longitudinal across the top. The little intermediate links or plots feature polished ends, which is a nice piece of attention to detail. There's a shoulder bevel that runs perfectly aligned along the sides of the links. Removable links are fixed in place using screws, and you can see that quite well here. And then the tolerances of the clasp remain outstanding, and it's quite secure when it's on the wrist. Taking a quick look at the case, you can see AP has always done things the right way, fixing the bracelets and straps to Royal Oaks, with few exceptions, using screws and bars, a more secure solution than spring bars. Now, what you can see here is that the case is in outstanding condition, really as crisp as the day it left Le Brassus, but you will note there's a little bit of protrusion of the white gold bezel bolts above the bezel, which marks this as a bit of a veteran bezel, possibly the original bezel on the watch, and in general, you can opt or decline to replace the bezel during an AP service if the bolts protrude above the bezel surface. Now you can see the finish is absolutely razor straight. Satination on the side, then there's the rounded polished section, and then the vertical satination on the top. But the bolts stand a little bit proud of the bezel, marking this as an older bezel, and yes, probably the one that originally shipped with the watch in the early 90s. I keep saying early 90s. Well, this watch has a serial number in the D44000 range, which marks it as a likely product of the early 1990s period, as the D series watches were made from 87 to 94. And of course, this model would only have been made up through 1993. Taking a quick look at the case, you could see the lines that made Gerald Genta's original 1972 Royal Oak famous. A wonderful integration of bracelet with cases and lugs, and then the rounded octagon inspired by a vintage diving bezel. That is or diving helmet, I should say, informing the bezel here. We have hexagonal bolts in white gold, and they are white gold, and they match the hexagonal crown right here. You can also see how the watch loaded from the front with a solid case back and a monoblock case construction, there's a little slot inboard of the crown that allows everything to be lowered into place. A little bit of a mark signs the times. There are two different signatures on these dials. If you get a really early one, the Audemars Piguet script is smaller. So the text is smaller, and then the A and the P are the same size as the other letters in Audemars Piguet. Just another thing to look for. If you ever see a photo of one of these and you're trying to gauge its era, this is one of the later 25654s. We also have a dial that is a satin opaline gold, which is very different from what you'd find on a conventional Royal Oak. They usually include the tapisserie hobnail. This is not that. This has appliqué baton style yellow gold indices, baton style hands, which are beautifully rounded across their top, almost like something a craft watchmaker would build today. A little cabochon at 3 and 9, and sunken sub-registers with a cruciform symmetry. Now, you always know you're looking at one of the original handful of Royal Oak Perpetual calendar references when there is no leap year indication on the dial. Again, after about 1992, 1993, that changed, and there would be a new movement with a different reference number, and there would be new generations of the Royal Oak Perpetual calendar with the leap year. A little bit ironic, since Audemars Piguet pioneered the Perpetual calendar with a leap year indication, but this movement was brought over pretty much unchanged from the blockbuster best-selling ultra-thin Perpetual calendar, 25548, I believe it was. And so that model lent its heart and its soul to the original Royal Oak Perpetual calendars. So what we have right here, underneath that monoblock integral caseback, is a JLC 920, a movement designed in 1967 for Patek, Vacheron, and Audemars Piguet. It has only ever been used by those brands, never by JLC, never by another customer. It is a 2.4 millimeter thick unidirectional winding ultra-thin automatic that was one of the very thinnest of its time. It powered the original Royal Oak Jumbo, the original Nautilus Jumbo, the original Vacheron 222, and many other haute de gamme watches over the years. And it has enough torque to act as a tractor movement, so here it drives the Perpetual calendar, which, once set correctly, does not need to be adjusted until the year 2100. The base movement is artisanally hand-finished. It winds unidirectionally to activate a 40-hour power reserve. It beats at a very vintagey rate of 19,800 vibrations per hour. It is adjusted in 5 positions, which is the high horology standard and chronometer standard. And then, of course, with the 2800 Perpetual calendar module, it gives you all of those functions, plus a moon phase that only needs to be corrected once every 122 years. The watch in its day would have been 20 meters water resistant. I do advise against testing that theory in the modern era, as this timepiece is well into the range that we would consider vintage in the modern era. Reach out to Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this AP Royal Oak Perpetual calendar 25654BA.